It usually happens in the quiet, unremarkable margins of the week. It might be on a Saturday morning before the house wakes up, sitting at the kitchen island with coffee, scrolling through the news, or perhaps sitting in the driver's seat of a parked car, taking a few minutes of silence before walking through the front door. During these mundane moments, a headline inevitably crosses the screen. It is an article about retirement planning with absolute authority, declaring a specific, monumental financial target every adult must reach. That number is almost universally presented as $1 million. Staring at the screen, a heavy feeling settles in the chest. It is the silent calculation of the massive, seemingly insurmountable gap between a modest workplace account and that seven-figure expectation. This is not high drama. There is no sudden cinematic panic. It is just the ordinary, grinding weight of feeling perpetually behind. It is a quiet, isolating resignation happening in millions of homes. People finish the article, lock their phones, and walk inside, carrying the heavy assumption they have somehow profoundly mismanaged their lives, because their bank accounts do not reflect this societal ideal. There is an unshakable belief that $1 million is the baseline. It feels entirely true because it is repeated everywhere, forming an echo chamber. The financial services industry relies heavily on this number as a standard benchmark. It appears in marketing materials, television commercials, and automated planning software. This creates an environment where a seven-figure portfolio is presented as a necessity. Software platforms and retirement calculators default to this aggressive, steep trajectory, drawing stark red lines on graphs to show users exactly how far behind. The culture treats this milestone as the minimum threshold for financial security. The implicit promise is that anyone who works hard will reach 1 million. Because this belief is so pervasive, it carries a sharp, punishing emotional edge. Arriving in your 50s with only a fraction feels like a personal failure. It creates a quiet, persistent shame and an assumption of being reckless. The assumption is that everyone else is quietly succeeding and funneling money away, while you are the only one struggling to balance the weekly grocery budget. But when we look at the actual statistical landscape, that belief shatters completely. The reality is that surprisingly few people ever reach that specific number. Reaching a seven-figure retirement portfolio is not the median outcome of life. It is, in fact, an extreme outlier in the financial world. Most working-class Americans will never see a retirement balance that large. This is not because they failed or lacked moral discipline. Compounding mathematics rarely align with the harsh realities of normal life. The narrative of effortless wealth ignores how money moves through households. Finance is often framed as a simple test of moral willpower, like skipping coffee magically translates into long-term wealth for everyone. Wealth accumulation is bound by strict, unforgiving structural constraints. Before investing for retirement, a dollar must survive the present gauntlet. Housing costs take the largest and most immediate portion of paychecks. Healthcare premiums and medications take another significant, draining share. These costs act as an invisible tax that drains potential surplus. Transportation is essential for maintaining income, but drains even more resources. Car payments, insurance, and repairs are constant financial drains. Servicing existing debt takes absolute priority over everything else. A person cannot invest their way out of high-interest obligations. Fixed costs of existence create a mathematical ceiling on long-term savings. Effort and discipline are necessary to keep a family afloat. But psychological effort cannot override the cold mathematics of stagnant income. You cannot budget out of a housing market that has doubled, nor can you optimize a grocery bill that grows heavier every year. Consider an ordinary American household earning $75,000 a year. On a spreadsheet, this looks comfortable, but the reality is different. After taxes and insurance, the monthly take-home pay shrinks considerably. Actual take-home pay often lands around $4,500. If rent or mortgage requires $2,000, half is gone. Utilities and groceries for a family consume another $1,500. The margin for error is incredibly thin, leaving perhaps $1,000. Add a standard student loan payment of $400. Vehicle costs, insurance, and fuel take another $400. Remaining capital for future planning is reduced to a couple $100. If this household redirects $300 every month, they are doing well. They are exercising immense discipline and looking ahead despite the pressure. Yet, $300 a month will not magically reach $1 million. The numbers are grounded in income limits and unavoidable living expenses. The shortfall is a product of structural mathematics and market forces. It is not a lack of moral fortitude or personal discipline. Consider a dual-income household earning $120,000 a year. The illusion of easy wealth falters under the weight of structural realities. This higher income arrives when the costs of existence are most punishing. For a couple with 2 children, daycare can exceed $2,500 monthly. That is $30,000 a year just for the privilege of working. Subtract childcare, a larger mortgage, and 2 car payments for daily commutes. Add the escalating cost of feeding, clothing, and medical care for children. The supposedly massive financial surplus vanishes entirely under these pressures. They might have access to a workplace retirement plan and an employer match, but aggressive savings rates are swallowed by the logistical costs of daily life. Their money is not being wasted on frivolous luxuries or extravagant vacations. It is being deployed entirely into the basic infrastructure of their current existence. Higher income merely allows participation in the modern working world. It does not automatically grant the cash flow required for generational wealth. Saving and investing are tied to specific, evolving stages of a human life. Life moves in distinct phases, not a straight, predictable upward line. Advice to save aggressively in your 20s assumes non-existent financial surplus. The first decade of adulthood is defined by entry-level wages and debt. Establishing an independent household from scratch carries an incredibly high initial cost. For most Americans, the 20s are about achieving basic solvency and survival. In the 30s, incomes rise, but logistical costs reach a punishing peak. Children arrive, demanding childcare and healthcare, requiring a massive capital commitment. Home maintenance and aging vehicles absorb raises as quickly as they appear. Financial pressure during middle years is immense, and surplus is often an illusion. It is entirely consumed by the friction of a busy, demanding life. Only in their 50s does the heavy lifting of debt finally ease. Children grow up, and the need for expensive daily childcare finally vanishes. Perhaps the long shadow of student loans is finally satisfied at last. This is the first time significant capital is freed for retirement savings. But by then, the timeline for compounding interest is dramatically shorter. They no longer have 40 years for their money to double and redouble. They have perhaps 15 or 20 years at best to save. Normalizing this sequence is essential for understanding the realities of personal finance. Wealth building is often delayed by decades due to the friction of life. Aggressive strategies for 30-year surpluses do not apply to mid-life expenses. Financial progress is about surviving the most expensive decades without catastrophic debt. Later, quieter decades can be used for rapid accumulation of wealth, even if the final number falls short of the $1 million ideal. Ordinary people make decisions that look irrational to an economist on a spreadsheet, but they make perfect sense in the context of human survival. Standard financial models assume a sterile environment where humans operate like machines, automatically allocating 15 or 20% of income regardless of the world. But the physical world is messy, unpredictable, and relentlessly expensive. When the furnace breaks in January or a medical emergency arises, people will immediately and correctly stop their retirement contributions. They will drain the small emergency fund they painstakingly built over years. Sometimes they are forced to borrow against their future for present stability. Immediate family stability and health always supersede theoretical future wealth. Middle-income finance is a constant, exhausting renegotiation of priorities. Long-term planning is frequently and violently interrupted by short-term necessity. People do the best they can, patching holes in the budget, accumulating small amounts in the quiet spaces between life's emergencies. There is a profound, entirely valid psychological toll to this constant vigilance. Financial fatigue is a real, heavy, and often unacknowledged burden. Working 50 hours a week only to see paychecks consumed by survival. Sacrificing more for a distant retirement feels impossible and emotionally crushing. Sometimes, a family spends money on a small comfort or a dinner out, not because they lack discipline, but because they need a psychological break from the relentless, grinding austerity of their daily lives. They need to feel their labor provides more than just utility payments. Even for a fleeting weekend, they need to feel the roof is secure. They do not fail because they bought too many coffees, or because they lack the proper wealth building mindset. They fall short because building a secure life is incredibly expensive. It is wildly unpredictable and disruptive to clean financial models.